Okay, so some of the etiquette rules that we've covered before are the same for in-class courses and online courses, but there are a lot of differences between how you effectively interact in those settings. And I'm going to go over how that's different for an online setting, and also how interaction in an online setting can be more challenging and therefore negatively impact your success if you don't take steps to overcome those challenges. So just some basic characteristics of online learning. It's often asynchronous, and that means that things aren't happening at synchronously together. Usually we associate that with asynchronous communication. So someone speaks, and then there's a lag between, and then someone else speaks. Or email and texting are asynchronous communication. So the online environment is usually asynchronous. It isn't something that if you're in a classroom and you're able to just raise your hand and ask a question as you listen to the lecture, that's a synchronous environment. Because you're not able to quickly raise your hand, there's lag between when you can ask a question and when you can get a response. So some courses, not all courses, are completely self-paced online courses. Now, I would say that if you're taking a course, it's more likely, if it's just a regular online www World Wide Web course like this one, then it's not self-paced. There will be, well, it's partially self-paced. There's due dates for assignments, but when you do those and when you listen to my video lectures are in many ways up to you. Unlike when you have to go into a class and the lecture is a specific time and a specific place. So a lot more of it is self-paced, and in a way there's a lot more flexibility because you can learn where you want, when you want. So when we go back to thinking about the space that you study in, well, you can find pretty good spaces that work well for you and your style. One of the For many people, the hardest things about this, though, is that most of the interaction that you have is digital. And that digital interaction is really heavily driven by writing. So email, the papers that you're submitting, it's not just what you're doing is heavily written, but also what your instructors are doing. I use a good number of video, like I am right now. Not a lot of instructors will necessarily do that. Well, then you have some instructors will be very video heavy, but even still there will be a lot of writing and reading to do. Not just in the sense of you have textbook reading to do like you would with any class, but that just getting through the Blackboard or any other learning management system, you have to go through a lot of reading and writing. Some of the ways that you communicate, and these are just some of them that you can communicate in the most common ways to communicate in online courses. You'll notice that most of these are written. I have them in blue. Discussion boards. I like to use video posts and discussion boards, but so that makes it something that's more visually interactive. But most courses will be written discussion boards. Blogs are written. Papers written. You might have some video conferencing, and that's something that would be synchronous or happening at the same time, so you would be logged in and your instructor would be giving the lecture. Sometimes these do happen, but even in that, your way to communicate back to the instructor is written. In some courses, you have the option of phone calls. Like this one, we have the option of you talking to me on the phone. These won't necessarily be the case, and it is non-written communication, however. It's just these don't happen as often. That means that online learning can be a challenge for certain types. It can be easier for certain types and harder for certain types. So I've broken that down here. Online learning is usually easier for people who are independent learners, or in other words, they're self-motivated. They can keep themselves on task. They handle time management well. They know how to, these are all the things I need to do, and this is the time I need to do it. And if I don't know that information, well, okay, I need to go find it. That's all what characteristics of an independent learner. It's harder for those who like to learn communally, or they like the classroom setting where they can ask questions and get immediate feedback. And along with that is maybe they're more externally motivated, so someone's there to remind them, and they have peers that are also going through, or friends, and that can remind them of due dates and things along those lines. So it's harder for those kind of learners. Now, if you have your communication preference is written, and by that I don't mean texting. It's there's different expectations. As we went over email etiquette, very different expectations in that form. This type of academic written communication is much more formal, and you won't, not in every situation in a career, but in most situations, in jobs, the writing is also formal. And the learning style where someone's a read-write learner, and that means that they learn best by reading material and thinking through it by writing about it. Now, again, harder for communal learners, but also it's harder for those that have a communication preference of face-to-face. So you're going to have a harder time learning online if that's your preference. That doesn't mean that you can't be successful. It's just you'll have to work on a lot of those written communication skills and kind of overcome that. And that would be the case in all types of academic learning, but especially online learning. And those who are kinesthetic learners. And kinesthetic means that you learn best by doing, actually putting something in practice, not just hearing about it or having it explained to you via written, but also actually doing it. There's not as many opportunities in online learning for kinesthetic learners. A lot of the differences will also mean that you need to have, because again, there's that digital communication is really at the base of online learning. It means that you need to have the technology skills to go along with it. You need to be comfortable with computers and the internet. And if you aren't now, you need to put a lot of time into developing those skills so you can feel confident. And you also need to work on your writing skills. Again, going back to the base form of communication in online learning, well, in academics in general, but especially online learning, is writing. So you need to build those skills in order to be successful. You also need to take advantage of any forms of interaction that are built in. Isolation is the biggest challenge for online learners. The main reason that people end up dropping online classes is a feeling of isolation. All of this kind of centers on the need, I've mentioned this before, for you to be self-motivated. That's the case in college across the board, especially so in online learning. You need to know when you need to seek help and actually go and have the initiative to go find it, because there will be less of that sense of someone being there. The instructor's right at the front of the class, I can go talk to him after class. You have to put an extra level of initiative in order to make sure that you're getting the help that you need. And again, you really do have to motivate your own learning. That in the online setting, since there's some things aren't quite as structured, you have to keep yourself on task and motivated. And you also have to be patient and wait for feedback, because it's not necessarily that you don't have the opportunity to be in the classroom with the instructor and just ask questions and get feedback instantly. A lot of good instructors will respond within a business day, but you shouldn't expect that to be the case. Think through any sort of questions that you might have in advance, work in advance. And you need to keep working. Don't ask the question and just stop working until you find out the answer. You have to keep yourself moving as a result. So these are some of the challenges, also some of those different ways that interaction is different. But again, I want to emphasize, work on those writing skills.